So we will begin this evening's meeting of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. Let me start by reading our remote script, and then we will get into it. So as a preliminary matter, this is Ashley Arisman, Chair of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Script, and then we will get into it. I think some of us need to maybe mute our YouTube. We'll start with Mark Beal.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg.
Aye.
Ashley Arisman, aye. Ian Golding.
Aye.
Dave LaFleur.
Present.
Maureen Phillips.
Present.
Joe Topham.
Present.
Awesome. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jeff Carlson.
Present.
Joanne Dodd.
Present.
And anticipated speakers on the agenda, please respond in the affirmative. We have Brian Madden.
Here.
Stan Humphreys.
Here.
I believe Paul Santos.
Here.
Burton Balkind.
Here.
Sarah Alger.
Here.
Don Bracken. Maybe not here. I'm not sure who is marked as just iPhone.
That's Jeff Blackwell.
Jeff Blackwell, okay. And then Art Gasparo.
Here.
Here.
I think that's everybody. So good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with the agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Nantucket Conservation Commission is convening by video conference via Zoom app, as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, I will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comments, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate meeting minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair leads the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. And for items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. Staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body, and instructions are on the town's website. The chair and/or staff will do their best to address the questions and comments. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. So with that, we will begin the public meeting with public comment, if we have any. And it looks like we do not have public comment at this point. So I will first start with tonight's continuances. Under notices of intent, we have Eli Zabar at 47 Squam Road, continued until September 17th. We have Kim Gluacki at 46 Easton Street, continued until September 17th. Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 35 Almanac Pond Road is continued until September 17th. Tina Eager McGoldrick Trust at 33 Quidnet Road is continued until September 17th. And then Mary Jo Buckland at 113 Hummock Pond Road is also continued until September 17th. And then under certificates of compliance, Silver Fox Partners Real Estate LLC at 235 Nantucket Road will also be continued until September 17th. So with that, we will begin our public hearing with notices of intent with Benton and Kelly Hayworth at 8 Pond Road. And this is represented by Brian Madden and Don Bracken.
Thank you very much. Brian Madden, representing the Hayworths. Just to reiterate, the proposed project involves a sewer connection, abandoning the existing septic system, proposed guest house in the front of the property that at its closest point is 97 feet away from the BVW and 13 square feet within the 100-foot buffer zone. Front proposed porch on sonotubes, replacing a stoop and brick patio entranceway. Based on the last meeting we had 2 meetings ago with the commission, we are proposing, or the applicants are proposing to relocate the shed that was installed sometime between 1998 and 2003, well before their ownership of the property was installed within the wetland prior to the revisions in the definition of the vegetated wetlands to include 18 inches to high groundwater. But the applicants are proposing to relocate that outside of the wetland within the existing driveway footprint, so an existing developed footprint. That will be on sonotubes, and the existing shed footprint within the wetland, a red maple sapling or a tupelo sapling will be proposed in its place. And then secondly, they are proposing to remove the wire mesh fencing that was attached to the pre-existing split rail fence along the edge of the lawn, and that's going to be removed entirely within the 50-foot buffer zone. So based on the updates and feedback we got from the commission, we feel that all impacts to resource areas have been adequately avoided, and the mitigation measures will result in a net improvement to the resource areas. And I'll turn over to questions. Oh, sorry, one other thing, just to interject. A question came up about the foundation for the guest house. Originally it was proposed as a crawl space. That has now been revised to a mono slab system, so an improvement there as well.
Thank you, Brian. Are there any questions from commissioners? Mark?
Brian, remind me why you you're just encroaching a little bit on the 100-foot barrier when you could, I would look like pretty easily stay out of the resource area entirely with just the house anyway.
Yeah, it's right up against the side front yard and side yard setbacks. So there's no ability to shrink it any further. But with the minimal intrusion into the 100-foot, we feel that the mono slab foundation will avoid any adverse impacts to the resource areas. And to reiterate, there is existing developed conditions, the existing house between that proposed guest house and the wetland boundary.
Thank you.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Brian, I know I appreciate you asking the homeowner to move the shed and them actually doing it. I think that's really great that they could follow through with that.
Yeah, it took a little work because they don't want to, there's some landscaping there and some ornamental trees that, but after meeting with the builder, they are able to shimmy it around everything and not disturb things too much.
Yeah, thank you. If there are no other questions or comments from commissioners, we'll look to public comment.
We haven't received any, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. So with that, Jeff, do we have everything we need to close this one?
Yes, we do.
Brian, would you like to close?
Please.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Ian. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And that moves us on to Wallach AC LLC at 45 Hulbert Avenue. And this is represented by Stan Humphreys and Sarah Alger.
Hi, Sarah Alger for the applicant, and Jeff Blackwell and Stan Humphreys are both with me to answer any questions that you might have. Just to remind you, this is a project that proposes to replace in kind a single family dwelling at 45 Hulbert. At the last hearing, we heard your concerns and questions, and we've attempted to address them in the materials that we submitted. You'll see from our revised plan that we've moved the house further back from both resource areas. The amount of structure within the 50 is now reduced by 93 square feet. The proposed vegetation in the sand strip along the bulkhead, which is an area about 495 square feet, we eliminated the American beach grass and we've added seaside goldenrod so that all the plantings are native salt-resistant pollinators that will be planted there. As you may remember, the plan also shows that about 391 square feet of existing driveway is going to be removed within the 25-foot buffer zone. The concrete foundation, which is non-compliant, it will be removed. That will eliminate these usable areas. There's like a changing area and a storage area and some other areas that are currently accessible both from the outside and from within the house. This will decrease the displacement of flood waters and allow greater passage of water in this area. 944 square feet of driveway reduction will be done in land subject to coastal storm flowage. We also submitted various photographs just to give you an idea of some of the features of the site. A waiver request that you requested. We are seeking a waiver under 136 103 F3 C, which is the net benefit section. We think given all of the changes that we're proposing, the moving the structure away from both resource areas, reducing the amount of structure within the 50, elimination of driveway within the 25, further elimination of driveway in the land subject to coastal storm flowage, and the improvements that will be made to the foundation, that a waiver on a net benefit basis under that section is justified. Because you raised it at the last hearing, we also went through an alternatives analysis Again, we think a waiver would be justified under that as well, but I think we fit better under 103 F3C rather than A, but we did provide an alternatives analysis. I understand there may have been some question as to the condition of the structure. It's not our position that the structure is falling down by any stretch. However, it is an older structure and it does need a lot of updating, maintenance, and repair. And unfortunately, once you start getting into that, once you start touching things, you end up in a situation where you have to bring the property up to code. That means jacking the building up, putting it on a compliant foundation to meet the floodplain. There's a lot of interior changes that would have to be made. And in the end analysis, that would take longer and be a greater disruption to the resource area than what we're proposing. We provided also, because you asked, the before and after architecturals, and as just kind of as an example of what's been allowed to go on down on Hulbert, we looked, and on either side of this property, 2 to the east and 4 directly to the west, the properties at 41, 43, 47, 49, 51, and 53 have all in the fairly recent past all been allowed to be, have the buildings removed and rebuilt in kind. Most recently, I think in 2015, the work was done at 43 Hulbert. And so we've given you copies of that just as an example. In fact, we think our project is better poised for success than 43 Hulbert. That in that property, they went forward on an alternatives analysis waiver. They increased the square footage within the 50 by 21 square feet and provided none of the net benefits that this project would be providing. So I think in short, we think we've responded to all of your concerns. We think the net benefit waiver is justified, and we think it's consistent with everything that's been allowed up and down Hulbert Avenue over the past 10 years or more. And we ask you to approve the project. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners?
Needs your attention.
Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I may direct this to the representative. So I'm looking at your planting list, and 3 out of those 4 plants are going to have a mature height of 3 feet or less. That's the Eastern Showy Aster, Sea Lavender, and Little Bluestem. Seaside Goldenrod has a mature height of 6 feet. I know there was an abutters lawyer's letter asking that the representative maintain plantings that are 3 feet or less for wetland scenic views. To me, that doesn't matter, but if the the lawyer's representative and the abutters representative would like to pick a different Solidago species, there's 13 or 14 others that exist natively on Nantucket. One, for example, is gray goldenrod, Solidago nemuralis, which has a mature height of 2 feet or less. So if you do want to, respect that abutters lawyer's letter and achieve mature height plants of 3 feet or less, you could perhaps pick a different goldenrod species. Thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Does the applicant's representative have a response to that?
Well, I mean, we originally revised our planting list at the request of this particular abutter. We heard at the last hearing that you were maybe not as enthralled with the American beach grass and would have preferred to have seen some goldenrod. So we reintroduced the goldenrod. I think that's probably a better solution for the resource area than trying to protect a private view from private property. I just don't think that really falls within your purview. That said, I don't think we're married to this particular goldenrod.
Okay.
We also don't want to get into a situation where we're constrained by the height of our vegetation.
Okay. Seth?
Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, personally, I don't care about this issue. It just, it was raised, and if your client and the abutter don't want to have a dispute in the future, there's something to think about, but that's really your decision, not mine. I'm just raising it because there are substitute goldenrod species that could be used. I love seaside goldenrod. I'd love to see it there as well. But if you would like the advice of using a different one to try to, not get in a issue with them later, there are other options is all I'm trying to say.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Seth. Jeff, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to make a quick comment on wetland scenic views, and wetland scenic views are something that relates to the public view from kind of public viewing areas. So we run into this from time to time about abutters and folks and views from private property to private property. Just wanted to keep in mind that it's the view that the public has of the resource area and the areas surrounding from areas accessible to the public, and not from someone's second floor window or first floor or whatever it is. It's focused on the way. So when you're contemplating what species or what heights, I think keeping that in mind is an important consideration.
Thank you, Jeff. Ian and then Joe.
So first of all, I'd like to thank Sarah for the work that you put in and the information you brought us. And so it's very helpful. Thank you. And but Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that a public right of way to the west of the property between the two properties, adjoining properties?
So if I may, Madam Chair, the area that's on the plan that's labeled as formerly Henry that accesses through the coastal beach there's a public footpath that goes over the top of the dune and then kind of down the backside that provides the public access to the beach. When Henry Street was put through the town yard sale program some time ago, the town retained rights through that existing sand path that's there for foot access. So there's public access to the beach that's granted kind of in perpetuity in that area.
So plantings would actually impact the public because they're using the footpath. So
yeah, I would keep in mind with that, Ian, that on that site, just to kind of look at it, I know it's incomplete, that at kind of the apex of that footpath before it enters the beach area itself, that it's in spots anywhere from 5 to 6 feet higher than the grade of the lot that's there. So you go up and over a pretty substantial hill before you get that. And that slope itself is pretty heavily vegetated. There's a lot of Rosa rugosa in there and a few other shrubbier species. And then further to the west, there's a fence and some more taller shrubs and trees on that side. So I guess in my opinion, I don't think that plantings there would have a really overwhelming impact on the view of the beach, especially because you get to the beach pretty quickly.
Thank you, Jeff. Joe?
So through the chair, Sarah, so the one problem I have was on Luke Thornwell's page, or the Thornwell's design page, A 1.0, which is the foundation plan. So in between the below grade storage and the garage, is there any way we can eliminate that concrete wall? It just seems like it's going to impede any flow coming from the harbor into the upland.
Wait, are you talking about A101? A1,
A1.0 foundation plan.
all that is going. That whole thing is going. That's the existing foundation plan.
Oh, okay. I thought that was the proposed for the new.
No, all of that is going. That's what I only included that to illustrate what we're eliminating that's currently under the house.
Okay. It was right after the proposed design. That's why. Sorry.
I'm sorry about that, but that's
Yeah,
that's in there.
it's
Okay.
tricky. It's labeled further up as the proposed demolition plan. It's just kind of a tricky plan.
Okay.
And it's
All
in
right.
a weird sequence. I agree.
Yeah, so that's part of our net benefit argument, that we're getting rid of those concrete walls, we're getting rid of those underground storage areas, all of that.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? Maureen?
Through the chair, Sarah, I also appreciate everything that's been done and all the information we've gotten. One thing I was wondering about, because mentioning that the lawn on the western side, well, there's I guess there is existing lawn, I guess all along that western side, and it was mentioned, there, you can't have anything undisturbed because that lawn has been there. And I was wondering if it would be possible in terms of having more mitigation, because what we're having is the reduction in coverage of the new house to the old is quite small. And I understand the issue of providing the storm flowage through the smart vents under the house. And that certainly will be a positive, but at the same time, we still, there still will be a house within the buffer zones. And if obviously anyone wanted to do that today, it could not be done. So I was wondering if the lawn areas could, if there would be any value to making them less manicured lawn, and perhaps try and make them, a bit more natural, I guess. So I was wondering about that, if that's possible or feasible.
Well, I think we'd prefer not to do that. We have a considerable amount of planting on here already, particularly with that coastal dune coming all along the western side of the property, which, as Jeff pointed out, is heavily vegetated. We'd be retaining all of that.
Yeah.
We haven't done, our final landscape plan yet, obviously, but I think at this point we'd prefer not to do that.
Well, I understand. It's just, I think the more mitigation we can have, where we have to, where we're dealing with a difficult situation of a house that on one level could be argued shouldn't be there at all, and obviously it was built a long time ago, and the new owners would like to have it be upgraded and everything. Just trying to see how much it could be brought back to the most natural state possible. And I understand this is all developed and all of that, but I wanted to mention that. And just I would encourage any amount of natural plantings that could be done instead of manicured lawn. Personally, I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And Maureen, one thing I was thinking about this property and others, they have to follow the best management practices for fertilizers, and we can condition them to be submitting soil tests and to not allow them to be using fertilizers, chemicals, pesticides on the lawn, which at least is a step in the right direction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would appreciate that, and I would hope that the applicant would be amenable to that. Thank you.
Yeah. And Jeff, I kind of have a question for you about this. So normally with these properties that are right, either on a water body or a wetland, we condition them to have all lighting be away from the resource area. And recently I was kind of thinking about some of the newer homes that are being built, and I'm wondering if that covers indoor lighting as well, because a lot of these new homes have recessed lights in their ceilings that actually point, outdoors and windows and are kind of aggressive for indoor lighting. And I was just wondering how that fits into our lighting provisions.
Sure. So I think the way that we typically write that condition is that all lighting is to be directed from the directed away from the resource area. I think in this case, we would probably add a provision with the exception of land subject to coastal storm flowage, because that's the ground in this case. But that would certainly cover, when we say all lighting, I would assume that that's any lighting that makes it to the exterior of the structure or beyond be directed away from the resource area. So I would assume if that's a light that's shining out the window, that being said, we've never done anything for, you have a typical desk lamp with a lampshade on it or whatever that shines through the window or any of that, really gone through those. But I think anything that was inside would qualify if it was shining directly out the window as like an exposed bulb to the resource area.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me.
No problem.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners before we look to the public? All right, so we will go to public comment.
I requested public comment at the start of the hearing, Madam Chair, and no one has provided any.
Okay, so I guess then, Jeff, do we have everything we need to close this?
We have all the required information, yes.
Okay. Sarah, would you like to close this?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there a motion to close?
Motion to close.
A motion made by Joe, seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Popham. Oh, Joe, you're muted.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
And that moves us on to Douglas M. Raymond at 5 Cornish Street, represented by Don Bracken.
Hi, Don Bracken, Bracken Engineering, representing the applicant. The project, it's a 4,750 square foot lot located with land subject to coastal storm flowage. The proposal is to add a 1-story, 8 foot by 14 foot addition to the front, along with an 8 foot by 20 foot covered porch. Also, there's currently 1 parking space on the property. We're proposing to add a 2nd parking space, forest material, shell type driveway. I talked to the architect about this and suggested using helical piles for a foundation system, and he agreed it was the best option given the groundwater depth and the soil conditions. We're showing the existing elevations on the property around elevation 4 to 4.5. The flood zone is at elevation 9. And the proposal will not include any changes in grades on the property or around the structure. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Don. Is there any questions or comments from commissioners? Maureen?
Yes, through the chair. Don, I missed exactly what you were saying about the foundation for the addition. Is that, what exactly is that going to be? I just didn't quite catch it.
Sorry if I wasn't clear. Helical screws, which will be drilled into the ground to support the foundation. So it won't be a standard concrete type foundation requiring dewatering.
Okay, requiring dewatering. Okay, thank you.
No dewatering is.
No dewatering.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? All right, seeing not, we will look to our public and see if there's public comment. Looks like there's no public comment on this one. Jeff, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes, we do.
Don, would you like to close? Oh, you're muted, Don.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Is there a motion to close? Motion made by Beal. Is there a second? Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur. Dave might be frozen.
Hmm.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
So that carries with Commissioner LaFleur frozen. So
Thank you.
the joys of virtual meetings. Thank you, Don. So that moves us on to Roberta M. Brown at 9 Beach Street, represented by Paul Santos.
I think we've entered new territory here, Madam Chair, with aye, nay, abstain, and now frozen.
Yeah, yes. All right, so Paul, I think we're ready for you.
Oh, thank you.
Excuse me,
Thank
Paul.
On behalf of the applicant, Roberta M. Brown, Paul Santos from Nantucket Surveyors. This is a notice of intent application for a property located at 9 Beach Street in Codfish Park. And the applicant is proposing to relocate an existing cottage that is on the abutting parcel to the west and move it to this parcel in the position that you see shaded on the attached plan. The existing dwelling is located in the heavier shading to the north of the drawing. The proposed cottage is located in between that house and Beach Street. The work occurs within the buffer zone to a resource area, which is located to the west, to the east. That resource area is a coastal dune, coastal bank interface, which is essentially the easterly limit of the edge of pavement on Codfish Park Road. In some cases, there's a coastal bank because there's a Jersey barrier that's been placed in that area to retain the dune. In other areas, it's just the dune itself. The subject property is actually outside of any regulated land subject to coastal storm flowage. So it is strictly a buffer zone filing. No waivers are necessary for the work for the existing structure, as it is in excess of 50 feet from the resource area. We do need to upgrade and relocate the existing septic system that is on the property. That is also depicted on the plan that you see before you. That does require a waiver, as it currently is less than 100 feet. The existing system is less than 100 feet to the coastal resource, and in the proposed condition that will be maintained, the similar situation will be occurring. We have been to the Board of Health and sought a variance for that setback distance, as Board of Health also has the 100-foot requirement to a resource area that the Conservation Commission has. Under the state health code, that setback is only 50 feet. So there'll be an upgrade of the septic system. There'll be the relocation of the cottage. We do have our DEP file number. As I said, we have been before the Board of Health and sought relief for the relocation of the existing septic system. This area is actually not in any of the town's watershed protection districts, albeit Harbor, Nantucket, Hummock Pond, etc. It's outside of any area that is a watershed protection or nitrogen sensitive area. I know the abutter to the east reached out to staff with some questions on the location of the cottage. I know staff provided a copy of the plan and also the owner, Bobby Brown, is actually on island this week, and she has reached out to the abutter. They are actually meeting tomorrow with a landscaper to discuss the positioning of the structure and ways to come up with screening and mitigation for that. So that issue with regard to the abutter, I believe, is being addressed. They didn't have any particular issues with the application as long as the work was done and permitted properly, and some of their concerns were raised. There's no change proposed to the existing grades out here. The lot is pretty much level. The cottage will be lifted, brought over to the site, and fit the natural landscape. It's only about a 1.5 story structure. It's small in nature, first floor with a small loft on a second level to it. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. We did include, I believe, a waiver in the application, and that waiver is specifically to do with the septic system setback. So happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Paul. We're going to go to Joe, who electronically raised his hand, so he's ready to go.
I apologize. I was bringing up the file and then I realized I have to recuse myself. So I'm recusing myself from this project. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from commissioners? So I'll go. So Paul, the cabana cottage that's being moved, what was the construction date of that? Is that pre-78?
No, that structure was actually 15 Beach Street was formerly the Santos residence. There was an old barn there, the 15 Beach Street property. That structure was built in the 80s, I think in the mid to late 80s. And that was, they tore the barn down and then, or garage or whatever it was there. And then they constructed this small cabana and cottage. That actually is outside of any resource area. So where it's coming from is outside the resource area, but it's coming into the resource area.
Yes, and that's what just makes me nervous. If it was pre-78 and we're moving it closer to a coastal bank, that just makes me nervous for the future. But if it's after 78, I think it's better.
Yeah, no, it's after 78. And actually, once it gets moved to this site, I think it's considered new construction. Anyway, we're putting a new foundation underneath it. It's new construction.
Okay. Jeff?
So just to go over this, it doesn't come up very often. We've talked about this at length with DEP. If you have a pre-78 structure and it moves from one lot to a different lot, if it moves closer to a resource area, it doesn't continue to gain its pre-78 status. That's what prevents people from hey, come rent my pre-78 shed down in the middle of the island and move it out to the coast and you can build a bulkhead. If it moves further away on that same lot or even across the street, it may be able to maintain it as long as it's retreating. But if it moves closer to, it doesn't have that statutory protection.
Thank you for clarifying that, Jeff.
And really quickly for Terry, the SE number is 3336.
Thank you. So any questions or comments from commissioners before we look to the public? Looks like no. And it also looks like we do not have any public comment. So Jeff, do we have everything?
I would like to ask a question of staff through you, if that's possible.
Yes, go ahead.
I would like to ask, Jeff, how often do you approve of moving a house closer or a structure closer to a resource area? Is this something that happens often, seldom, or not very often at all? Thank you.
That's a good question. I think it honestly, Burton, depends on the resource area. We typically don't see a lot of structures moved into jurisdiction if it can be avoided. This is really one of the few. And again, we don't typically see, obviously, for structures not moved into an area where it wouldn't be compliant by the buffer zone, so never into the 50 or the 25, certainly. But I would say that in my 20 years, this may be the first or second. It's the first one I can remember that I've ever seen something move closer. So very rare.
Thank you.
Yeah, very good question, Burton. Thank you for your answer, Jeff. So Jeff, with that, do we have everything we need to close?
Yes, you do.
Paul, would you like to close?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there a motion?
Motion to close.
Motion made by Maureen. Is there a second? Seconded by Mark. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
All right, so that carries with Commissioner Topham recused and Commissioner LaFleur off the call for that one. So thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
So that moves us on to amended orders of conditions, and we'll start with Gisela G. Leinhardt at 11 Jonathan Way, represented by Jeff Blackwell.
Hello, Jeff Blackwell here, representing the proposed amendment. This is the second public hearing for the proposed changes. And we've done some work and come up with, I think, a better set of amendments and more in keeping with the Conservation Commission regulations after listening to your comments and concerns. I'll kind of just run down quickly without reading my letter. One of the things we've done is reduce the size of the pool by 64 square feet. The patio is also now designed to pitch away from the wetlands, so any splashing of pool water will be directed westerly away from the wetland. Roof, gutters, and downspouts have been added, and those downspouts will be directed to subsurface infiltration chambers. We've been able to, by a combination of efforts, eliminate the need for the previously granted 2-foot groundwater offset waiver. It's unique in my experience to work on a project where we can actually eliminate the need for a waiver. And that was done by a combination of choosing a different composting chamber or manufacturer, the Phoenix company, and also employing the use of a vacuum toilet system so that the composting chamber, which had originally been designed to be placed in the crawl space, thereby deepening the crawl space depth, has been moved up to the first floor of the building, each building. So there'll be 2 composting chambers. And working with a structural engineer, we were able to obtain a design for a frost-protected shallow foundation so that now the bottom of the concrete footings for this abbreviated crawl space is now 2 feet and 2 inches above the groundwater level. Those are the main changes. I described a fairly straightforward response to concerns that were expressed about the ability to construct the shed to the eastern part of the property and also the small landscape patio associated with it. The shed will simply be, well, I'll start with the how do you get to the work area, and that is the brush along the path, the proposed path will be all cut by hand. There will be no machinery other than I'm sure an occasional chainsaw use, but everything will be hand pruned and trimmed and cut to provide access for the east end of the property. And then the shed will be prefabricated in the upland areas and simply carried in piece by piece and assembled in place. The foundation, if you could call it that, will simply be a layer of gravel upon which some cinder blocks will be placed, and that will support this minimal type structure. It doesn't need much of a foundation support. Those are the main points that I have attempted to address, and I'd be happy to listen to any more or answer any more questions you may have.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Maureen?
Jeff, I was also pleased to see that this new vacuum and composting system allowed it not to be going into the groundwater. And I was wondering, is this something that could be used in other places on island? Is this space unique in some fashion, or is this something that could be encouraged as a way to avoid waivers, because of the groundwater issues?
I think the short answer is yes. It is a system that, until there is more widespread public acceptance of this type of system, which is widespread in Europe and also widely used, I would say, more in rural areas, Vermont, New Hampshire, Canada. This is really widely used, and the comfort level is much greater. But I think the short answer is yes. It could be used for that purpose, to help offset depth of foundations.
Well, it's very good to know about it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? So I must admit, I still feel pretty duped by this project, but it is what it is. Jeff, is this one that we could condition so that whoever is doing the landscaping is named and has to meet with you to ensure that they actually follow these guidelines?
Yeah, so this is an amended order of conditions request. So you guys have the ability to put conditions onto the project that protect the interest. So certainly if you guys have some ideas, even if it's something that takes a little bit of thought, we can certainly, if you guys are prepared, close the hearing and then issue out the amendment at the next hearing. We could put a draft together if there's specific concerns, or if we feel like we can do it on the fly, we can do it on the fly too.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. I know if this passes, whoever's doing the landscaping is important to have contact with you. I also think some sort of condition being named that no electricity, no plumbing can run down that path to the shed, because it just screams to me someone digging a trench by themselves and running the power out there. So I'm hoping that can be conditioned too. Mark?
Through the chair, Jeff, what's the change in ground cover of the two structures from what it was to what you're proposing?
The change is an increase of 532 square feet. The original structure and porch, the total of approved structure, was 1,368 square feet. And we're showing now 1,900 square feet between the two proposed structures.
Thank you.
Ian, did you have a question or comment? And then I'll go to Seth. Oh, you're muted, I think, Ian.
So, Jeff, is the structure on the east corner there, the 10 by 20? What is that exactly?
The applicant in this case is Barry Eng, who is the prospective buyer. And after getting to know Barry through many conversations and back and forth, I'm reminded of a description of a similar structure that was built along Almanac Pond Road. And it was described to me as being an interpretive center for the appreciation of getting away from it all and just being out in the sort of the middle of a nowhere in a thicket. So I completely support your any controls on the completion of the work, how the work is performed, the oversight that Jeff Carlson will have, and the prohibition against power, certainly water. It's a little walking path down to a getaway area, and I think all of us could see the benefit of something like that in our lives. No radio, no nothing, just sort of get away and read a book. But that's how it was described to me, and
so it won't have any power, but the path is going to go through the vegetated wetland. I mean,
no, it's going to go through the path. Will not require any waivers. It's not going to go through a wetland. It's going to, at one pinch point, it is very close to the 25-foot setback from a wetland on the north and a 25-foot setback from a wetland on the property. I think if there's a little solar panel, so there's a low wattage light bulb at the shed, I mean, I could envision that as something that wouldn't cause light pollution, but it's meant to be just a low-key use.
Thank you, Jeff. Ian, do you have further questions?
No, but I think we need to make sure we condition it in such a way that it doesn't become something else.
Yeah, I agree with you. Seth, do you still have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I think it's going to come down to really good conditions here as well. Thank you to Jeff Blackwell for giving us a picture of what it's going to be, the shed, if it's going to be an area where the applicant goes and does artwork or reads a book, that's fine. But I'd hate to see it end up being a place where machinery is stored, or where, you're getting a grill set up or a little cooking cafe or whatever. So if we just condition no storage of mechanical equipment, no water, no electricity, I think it will retain its character of a nice relaxation station instead of what it could be, especially if the property ownership changes at some point. People might decide they want to use it for something else. And then also, I think we need a few other conditions regarding the path, especially the point where it pinches up against the 25-foot buffer zone. I get everything's going to be landscaped and maintained by hand, but I think we need some type of physical marker or demarcation, even if it's just a survey flag or a stake showing where that 25-foot line really is. I wouldn't want a fence to go up, but something permanent would be great just in that one spot. And because it's really, I've run a a lawnmower or a weed whacker before, it's really easy to take a couple extra feet by accident. And then also, given the technology for the vacuum chambered composting system, that's almost likely going to be a installation that requires someone from off island to come and do that. I don't think we have people who do that here. So knowing what that company is and when they're going to be here, so that staff could meet with them before it goes in. I know we already have a condition in the order that talks about the septage hauling, but it'd be good to have an on-site meeting with the installer before that goes in as well.
Thank you, Seth. Those are all great ideas. I know I was concerned with one aspect of the path, because I was having trouble picturing like how many stepping stones there would be, if it would be kind of a full stone walking path or just sporadic stone. And the rototilling, loaming, and seeding made me a little bit nervous. And I think you'll probably need siltation fence if you're rototilling that path. But maybe it can be avoided. Like again, that might be a meeting with the landscaper. But that aspect made me a little nervous just because it's so close to both 25s.
Madam Chair, I do know that Mr. Eng has hired a landscape architect, and unfortunately he was not able to develop a design prior, just because of his workload. But the submission of a landscape plan, I completely support that requirement within the order of conditions, and the site meetings. Everything you've talked about is in keeping with the prospective owners, my understanding of his use. He's been a pleasure to work with because he doesn't fight about pushing even more. I know that there's a feeling that this has gotten bigger, but I'm happy to offer and support all the conditions that have been spoken about.
Thank you, Jeff. And I just have one more question I'm remembering. In your submission, you had a lot of photographs of native plant species, and I just wasn't sure if those were pictures of what's already on site or if there was some planting location that I just wasn't finding on the plan.
About the only thing that the landscape architect could pull off was to go through your approved plant list and suggest a number of plants that the buyer and he would suggest for planting. So those are all suggestions at this point, and a landscape plan will be specific to the location of plantings.
Thank you. Any other questions, Seth?
Yeah, I'm just looking through that plant list and pictures right now, and it would be good to see the actual landscape plan come in. Everything looks good here except for the scrub oak listed. Quercus viridifolia is actually the Pacific scrub oak, not the one we have here. We have ilicifolia, so just making sure we don't get that non-native planted.
Any other thoughts or comments before we look to the public? It looks like not. So Jeff, do we have public comment on this one?
Nothing as of yet.
All right. So Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close and issue the amended order?
I think if you guys have all the information you need, you could close it. I think given the laundry list of suggestions that Seth had and a few other things. If it's okay, would like a chance to try to write a draft for you guys to actually review and then issue at the next hearing. I know that's probably not ideal for Jeff Blackwell, but I would hate to try to do this on the fly right now.
Okay. So Jeff, are you amenable to that? That we'll close tonight and issue at the next meeting? Or would you just keep it open and maybe you'll have a landscape plan by then?
Yes, as Jeff Carlson said, there's just too much to write on the fly. So I wouldn't ask you to do that. And so continuance until, I don't know if you want to close the hearing at this point, and then deal with the order of conditions at the next meeting.
Okay. So Jeff, is that easier if we just continue it until the next meeting?
Well, if you leave it open, you have the option of additional material coming in. If Jeff thinks they can have a landscape plan put together by then, that would give you the ability to discuss it as part of the open hearing. If you close it, that stops all information. So you can certainly condition a landscape plan coming in to review. It's totally up to you guys. I don't think it 6 1/2 dozen, to be perfectly honest in this case.
Seth?
If Jeff Blackwell, the representative, is amenable to it, I would say it makes more sense to leave it open with the hope that we get a landscape plan in.
Okay, yeah. I'll see what I can do to hurry that along.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. So this will continue then until September 17th?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Seth.
And that moves us into Rec 21 WP LLC at 21 Washing Pond Road. And this is represented by David Haynes.
Good evening, all. This is a request for an amended order of conditions at 21 Washing Pond Road. You were originally permitted a swimming pool, a cabana, and landscaping and a path. And this one includes actually now has added a retaining wall outside of 50 feet from the outside of the 50-foot no structure zone, and right along the previous edge of the pool and the landscaping for the pool. So it's outside, it meets your regulations, but it does require an amendment because it wasn't a structure that was included on the original order. And what that wall does is actually reduces a lot of the grading that was previously going into the 50-foot setback and down that slope. The retaining wall will be basically from 1 foot high to approximately 5 feet high at the lowest end. And that will eliminate, as I said, a lot of the grading and actually some of the disturbance of the vegetation. The swimming pool has been moved slightly. The cabana has been reconfigured slightly. Those were all previously approved. Nothing is any closer. Well, the retaining wall is slightly closer as a structure to the wetland, but still outside of the 50. But the pools are basically no closer than they were before. Also, one other aspect that I didn't mention in my letter is there's a walking path that goes down to the pond. There's an existing path there, and they were actually going to add to that and bring it in from over by the cabana and snake it through and then bring it down from the southeastern end of the pool. Now they're just tying into basically a very short section to tie into completely into the existing. So this does have a reduction of work between 25 and 50. And that basically all other aspects of the application remain the same. There's a planting plan that's included and that was previously approved. And so other than that, that's my presentation.
Thank you, David. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Looks like no. Oh, Mark?
Is there a way we can, given the slopes, we ought to have some control over when they pump the pool out and where the water goes? Can we condition it with that in mind?
Jeff, do we have original pool conditions on this one that would condition the water going off-site?
Give me 1 second to just pull it up and I will let you know.
Thank you. While we're waiting on that, it looks like Ian has a question or comment.
Well, the answer is I remember that we conditioned it pretty thoroughly.
So I was able to, I have the original here. So the original order has a condition that's very specific where the pool shall only be drained to a pump truck and removed from the site for disposal. A yearly report shall be filed of maintenance activities that require the lowering of the water level of the pool with records showing the volume drained by the pump truck.
Thank you.
Also, it's a canister system, so it does not have a discharge of a backwash system. So there's no discharge from the filter.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I was just gonna make a suggestion on a condition on the revised plan that I thought of with discussion. So where the existing path is, I was gonna suggest as a little extra precaution, I think Mark was trying to get to this, that maybe at the head of the path, trying to avoid grading, but maybe at least some sort of, small couple inch high or 4 or 5 inch high berm run across the head of that path to direct any water that does get that way instead of channelizing down the path off to the side or give it a chance to hold and infiltrate there. Maybe something that's an idea to kind of look at.
Like a water bar.
Yeah, like a water bar.
Like a water bar to divert it off to the downhill side. Excellent idea.
Thank you.
I'm just
Jeff.
picturing some sort of water running down the path, whether it's rainwater or anything. And I think avoiding a channel is always a good idea.
Yes, definitely. Any other thoughts or comments from commissioners? If not, we'll look and see if there's any public comment on this one. Looks like there's no public comment. So Jeff, do we have everything we would need to close and issue this?
We do. I was just going to make a suggestion that we add that condition 25, that a berm or water bar be installed at the head of the path to the pond. To divert water away from the path.
Ian?
Perhaps we should have more than one. In other words, it's a 12-foot drop? Or, I mean, it's actually close to a 20-foot drop, isn't it? So maybe several.
Several would be, I mean, they could be configured into little steps in there that would actually do that, going across the slope and pick up the water, make sure it didn't. That would be fine. That would be excellent.
Well, we could change it to be that a berm or water bar be installed at the head of the path and then as needed along the path to divert water from the path.
Thank you.
I think that's good. Thank you, Ian, for that suggestion. Any other thoughts or suggestions? Looks like no. So Jeff, as you're writing this, we do have everything we would need to close an issue.
Yes.
David, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Okay. Is there a motion to close and issue the amended order?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Motion made by Ian. Is there a second? Seconded by Seth. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham. Oh, you're muted, Joe.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, David. That moves us on in the public meeting to request for determination. We have the Monomoy Road Real Estate Trust at 26 Monomoy Road, represented by David Haynes.
Good evening again. This is a, excuse me, gotta get on the right page. This is a request for determination to verify the wetland boundaries on this site. There's a large bordering vegetated wetland, shrub swamp and wet meadow that comes off that's rimming a salt marsh out farther to the north along the creeks. And then so there is a bordering vegetated wetland that's been delineated by flags number 1 through 20 with a few omissions for adjustment of the line. There's also a short section of coastal bank over right just to the north of the house. Thank you, Joanne. From flags number equivalent basically to the BVW flags 1 through 3, just upgrading of them. This is a coastal bank by policy because the limit of land subject to flooding at elevation 8 intercepts a slope there that's between 10-to-1 and 4-to-1. It's not steeper than 4-to-1. And so the 8-foot contour is the coastal bank. Farther to the southwest, that area around the 8-foot contour levels out and is flatter than 10-to-1, so there's no coastal bank there. So what we're asking for is verification. The other resource on this area on the site is land subject to coastal storm flowage up to elevation 8. So we're asking for a verification of the bordering vegetated wetland as depicted by the flags and shown on the plan. Delineate the verification of the limit of the coastal bank at elevation 8 in the northeast corner or section of the site. And then the land subject to coastal storm flowage at elevation 8. The site is not within a mapped rare species or priority habitat by natural heritage. Actually, a portion of the site is, and that's basically in the wetland area and farther to the north and northwest. But the house and along the road is not within that habitat area. Basically, that is it. We're using this for planning and no work is proposed at this time.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Jeff, has staff been out to look at this one, and do you guys have a suggestion?
Yeah, we've actually been on that site a couple times, as David kind of alluded to. If you look at the flag numbers, they jump from 7 to 10. We met David out there and did some revisions in that area based upon soils. We went out and took a look and felt that there were hydric soils outside of the original line and worked together to adjust that. And then an additional area, just got to get back to the plan that we looked at and adjusted for some soils.
11 and 12.
11 and 12. It is kind of a difficult site. Most of it was maintained lawn, and it hasn't been as maintained in the last bit. So some of the wetland vegetation kind of crept back in, and there is some stands of what looked to be probably just mowed around areas before that had some bullgrass and some bulrush that kind of came in through the season. So I think we feel comfortable now that that line is okay after kind of doing that and going through the soils and agree on the policy coastal bank and the land subject to coastal storm flowage. So I think we would recommend the positive 2A at this point.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions from commissioners? Ian?
I just wanted to compliment David on the locust map, which I think is quite unusual.
What, a 1979 USGS map?
Well,
Right.
and where the site is on the actual map.
Okay.
Any other questions from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue a positive 2A confirming the resource area boundaries? Motion made by Beal, so seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, David.
Thank you very much and have a good evening.
You
Thanks.
too. So that moves us on to Pocomo Sand Dune Realty Trust at 29 Pocomo Road, and this is represented by Jeff Blackwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The property at 29 Pocomo Road is a vacant property, and the owner would like to construct an alternative route to construct a driveway. No other work is proposed at this time, so confirmation of the wetland boundary and construction of a gravel driveway is the only work that is proposed. The resource area is coastal bank and land subject to coastal storm flowage are the two resource areas. There is a bordering vegetated wetland that had previously been approved off to the northwest under a RDA back in 2015, I think. But there's a shallow, kind of a shallow valley that brings the flood zone up into the northwest corner of this property, which is therefore bringing a coastal bank along with it, with this flood zone. And that's about it. It's proposed to be a gravel driveway, and that's the only work proposed.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Carlson, has staff been out to look at this one?
Yes, and we would recommend the positive 2A and the negative 3 to allow the work.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue the positive 2A and the negative 3?
So moved.
So motion made by Ian. Seth, do you want the second?
Sure, second.
Okay. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. And that moves us on to John C. Raphael at 37 Somerset Road, represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm before you tonight with an RDA to approve a wetland boundary as well as to establish no cutting zones on the property. There's also a sewer connection that's proposed to convert from an existing septic system. The sewer connection is greater than 90 feet from the resource area. This is a property where some brush cutting had occurred by an agent of the owner without understanding of there being a wetland resource area in the middle of the property down in the low spot. And there was no, tilling or root disturbance of the area. We came in and the edge of the wetland is very clear. It's a kind of a sharp drop off, may have been altered at some past time on the property. But we would like to put in wood posts where I show the red dots, so that in the future, any property owner will understand where the area has to remain no disturb on this property. And we would also agree to monitor for the next few years and provide a report with photos. The vegetation is already coming back, very well, as I think you can see in the photos that I included. This work had been done in the early winter. And with that, I'd be happy to try to address concerns or questions that you may have.
Thank you, Art. Jeff, has staff been out to this site?
Yes, we have, and would agree with Art's assessment that that vegetation is starting to come back pretty nicely, and appreciate the suggestion that he had.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any questions from commissioners? Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Art, for your description. I had originally notified staff of this site back in February when I learned that unauthorized brush cutting had occurred. And it's, I guess, a little disconcerting to see it come in as an RDA rather than, a notice of intent to repair that unauthorized work or some type of enforcement order. But I understand what's trying to be done here is to establish that limited area, going forward. And I think that if staff and the representative feel that that vegetation has already started to reestablish, then I'll agree with their opinion, or I'll cede to their opinion. I just want to make sure that we're really recognizing what happens, and that moving forward, we're making sure that that area returns to the wetland that it was intended to be.
Thank you, Seth. Jeff?
Yeah, so I apologize for not being on mute there for a second. And I don't know if anyone heard Joanne as well. We just kind of pulled up our history on that. And we originally notified the applicant of the issue in March, and it happened right before we left the office here on March the 13th, and kind of disappeared for COVID for a little bit. And since we've been back, they've been pretty responsive to get back and kind of checking in. One of the things we were kind of benefited with was no work happening kind of in the early part of the growing season after it had occurred. And I think after we had kind of originally assessed it, once we got back to work in May, really, that the vegetation had started to come back in and didn't really feel like there was going to be an excessive amount where there was going to be a lot of replantings or other assessments to go in. So I think that's where we kind of went down the RDA path for directing them for which filing. But that was really solely based upon kind of an in-person inspection kind of in the early part of the summer. But I would agree with Seth. Typically notices are what we see in these cases with enforcements, but the enforcement would have gone out in the time where we weren't here and able to really access sites.
So Jeff, I have kind of a follow-up to you with that. Since this is an RDA that is essentially asking to do work, is there are there monitoring components we can attach to this to ensure that the plant species come back?
Sure. So when you guys issue under a -3, there's a couple blanks that are there, and you guys can insert conditions as needed underneath that. We try not to use conditioning RDAs too much and keep it pretty simple and for pretty straightforward projects, but you can certainly require yearly reports to come in that demonstrates that regrowth has continued and that the posts are installed. But that is a provision that's allowed under notices. Under RDAs.
Thank you, Jeff. I think definitely based on Seth's comment, we would probably want that sort of condition of yearly photographs. And then maybe a condition that if it doesn't revegetate, that they have to come back and see us. Seth?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I would agree. We'd want both of those things. One of the things that I'm thinking is with the RDA, as I understand, we don't have a certificate of compliance coming in like we would with the notice of intent. So we kind of have to put these things into place beforehand for the revegetation and making sure the posts are installed and making sure everything's kind of doing what it needs to. I mean, it seems like the representative is willing to do photo monitoring and maintain what they need to do. But I just want to be very clear that, you know, if something changes, we'll need to reevaluate and make sure the wetland species that should be there get replanted at some point.
Yes, thank you, Seth. Jeff?
All right, I don't want to interrupt. I know Art's tried to raise his hand a couple times for this, but I think in this case, if we were to do it, I think a condition with the yearly photo monitoring that simply stipulates that if the plants aren't there by the end of 3 years, that the commission can order a notice of intent to be filed for any further work to be done. And that would probably cover that requirement. And then if not, the commission could issue them sort of written sign off that that notice of intent wasn't needed based upon the monitoring reports.
Thank you, Jeff. Art, did you have a comment?
I was just going to add two things. One is that I would point out that the area to be demarcated as no disturb is not only just the 25, it also covers 50% of the area between the 25 and the 50. So it is an expanded area beyond just the 25. I agree with respect to the notice versus the RDA. In this case, you know, it's a very limited size resource area. The owner fully understands, was upset with what happened. All activity has stopped. And then my intent would be that we would show the posts in the monitoring. So then, you know, when I provide a report in the pictures that the posts were all put in, and then you would have those as well. And in terms of the plants coming back, it's already, you know, it's even with this dry summer, it's really, you know, doing quite well. And I think left to its own devices will, you know, naturally repopulate with what was there, as opposed to a notice where we would have been introducing other species and coming in, and you know, that was kind of where we were looking at it from as well.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or comments, is there a motion to issue a positive 2A and a negative 3 with the included conditions that we discussed? Seth?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joe, so by roll vote, Beal?
Aye.
Engelborg?
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding?
Aye.
LaFleur?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Topham?
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. Thank you. And that moves us on to certificates of compliance. We're going to start with Take It Easy LLC at 38 Wall Street, and this is represented by Art Gasparo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There was a garage that was removed from this site within the flood zone, and that's kind of what we boxed out and just kind of showed the difference for the certificate of compliance. The grades are all the same. The site's the same as what was there. They took out that garage, and they did put 2 HVAC units in the back up on platforms compliant with the flood zone, and that's the extent of the work.
Thank you, Art. Jeff, has staff been out to look at the site?
Yes, and we would agree that it's in compliance with its order of conditions.
Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue the certificate? Motion made by Beal. Seconded by Phillips. So by roll vote, Beal?
Aye.
Engelborg?
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding?
Aye.
LaFleur?
Aye.
Phillips?
Aye.
Topham?
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that moves us on to Lawrence at 4 Wamasquid Place, represented by Don Bracken.
I think I'm actually covering for Don. So,
Okay.
So this was for the construction. If you look at the plan, it was for the construction of the 16 by 32 foot in-ground pool with the surrounding fence and kind of amenities that are there. It's constructed in compliance with its location, and the vegetation around that fencing, especially on the wetland side, is all intact. And we would recommend the issuing of that certificate of compliance with ongoing condition 19 and 20, which relate to the discharge of pool water and the pool treatment system.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue the certificate with conditions 19 and 20 ongoing?
So moved.
All right, motion made by Ian. Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
Right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Dem Belleg at 137 Pulpus Road, represented by Paul Santos.
Thank you. 137 Pulpus Road was the notice of intent issued for construction of a pool, hardscaping, fencing, some septic component replacement within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. Work has been completed. Actually, it was not necessary for us to relocate the septic components within your jurisdiction. However, the applicant did elect to add an IA system to the property outside of your jurisdiction only because we were in that area working. It's in the harbor watershed. And if this property is ever sold in the future, that would have to be added now under current Board of Health regulations. So that is in place. The rest of the work, the pool, and everything has been constructed in compliance with the order. There was a precondition of the order that before work started, there was the removal of some deer fencing that had been placed within the resource areas by the applicant. That had been taken out prior to any of the work under the order starting. And happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Paul. Jeff, has staff been out to this site?
Yeah, we're out upon the early removal of that deer fence, and then we've been out to see that it's compliant. And our recommendation would be that the certificate could be issued with ongoing conditions 19, 20, 21, and 22. The first three relate to the treatment and discharge of the pool, and then 22 is the all lighting shall be directed downwards and away from the resource area.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue the certificate with conditions 19, 20, 21, and 22 ongoing?
So moved.
I think Maureen got you with her hand. Mark, do you want the second?
Yes.
Okay. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And that moves us on to Arthur H. Patterson and Nancy R. Chiswick at 42 Meadowview Drive, represented by Brian Madden.
Hi, sorry about that. Proposed or the COC request involves the abandonment of the septic system and tying in with the sewer connection, which has all been performed as approved. And we have the as-built plan in front of you. I'll just turn over to questions.
Thank you, Brian. Jeff, has staff been out to the site to confirm?
Yep, and we would recommend the issuance of the certificate of compliance with no ongoing conditions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue the certificate of compliance?
Motion to issue.
So motion made by Joe. Is there a second?
Yes.
Seconded by Ian. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur. Oh, Dave might be frozen again. So we'll skip LaFleur. Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, so that, oh, Dave, are you back?
Yes, I apologize. I'm having a real tough time with the internet tonight. Yes.
So did you hear that project?
I did.
Aye. Aye, okay, perfect. So that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And then that moves us on to Robert C. Wright at 29 Medui Creek Road. Jeff, should we take these last two together?
Yes.
So we have Robert C. Wright at 29 Medui Creek Road, and then Robert C. Wright and Suzanne Wright at 29 and 33 Medui Creek Road, represented by Jeff Blackwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's appropriate to look at these two orders of conditions together because they became linked. The second order of conditions, 1534, superseded the original order to a certain degree when there was actually some mowing discovered in a wetland area. So in 2002, the newer order of conditions required reestablishment of a buffer, a vegetated buffer. It allowed a continuation of a walking path within the 25-foot setback. And then there was, in addition to the garage structure and the installation of some underground utilities. In fact, the allowed walking path, only about half of it was constructed, and it is as minimal a walking path as you'll ever find. It's barely mowed, maybe a couple times a year. It is not a turf path or anything like that. It's naturalized very well. And the other elements of the orders of conditions have been substantially satisfied. So I don't have anything further to say, just I wanted to offer that context.
Thank you, Jeff. Jeff Carlson, have you been out to the site to look at this one?
Yeah, and we would agree that it's in compliance, and I think I would agree with Jeff's sentiment on that path. I know we had a hard time even knowing where it was on the plan, kind of locating that path, so I don't think it's really, it's definitely not what we would normally see as a maintained path. So I think we would say that both these certificates could be issued.
Are there any ongoing conditions with these ones?
No, these are both so old. This is before we got smart about conditioning things.
All right.
Especially the 565.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue both certificates?
Motion to issue.
All right, motion made by Joe, seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
And then that moves us on to orders of conditions. And I know Jeff emailed these out this afternoon, so hopefully you guys have those, or Joanne's going to pull them up, even better. So we're going to start with Benton and Kelly Hayworth at 8 Pond Road.
So just to really quickly, I've made some additions to a few of these orders during our discussions tonight. So again, and the one thing I've started to change is the photographs, and I've started to provide a date that they need to be submitted by, just so we have an expectation of when to get them and can actually start tracking down people. So we have the photo monitoring for the restored area with the removing the shed to be submitted to the commission by the 1st of December.
Jeff, with this one, should we add a condition because it is mowed into the wetland about fertilizer or soil test submissions for that area?
Let me just, so I wrote a new condition for the 45 Hulbert one that I'll throw out there to put onto this one. So let me just kind of copy and paste it over so I can get the number correct. So it would be condition 20 in this case. And I've changed that to start to read, the applicant shall provide a yearly soil test and written fertilizer program to gain the ability to utilize fertilizers on the locus. All fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides shall be applied by a licensed applicator, and those licenses shall be provided to the commission. In addition, a yearly report listing the timing, amounts, and types of all 3 of these substances shall be provided to the commission by December 1st of each year.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from commissioners?
Should we flag the wetland end or add stones or something to kind of not let someone mow back in what they were doing before?
I mean, I think that would probably be a good idea in this site. Maureen?
Yeah, would something like the posts that are going to be used in that previous one we just talked about, adding something like that so it isn't, isn't done accidentally again?
Yeah, this one, it's kind of funny because they were removing, and maybe I was unclear, they were just removing the like mesh or wire from the split rail, or were they removing the whole thing? Because the split rail does kind of serve as some demarcation.
Just the mesh.
It was just the mesh.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So there is split
like
rail
that's-
on part of it.
I feel like that should be pulled out of the wetland. It should be beyond the flagging.
Okay. Jeff, is there any way to condition that?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, you could request, you could say that the split rail fence needs to be relocated to the wetland line and mowing discontinued within the wetland.
Yeah, I mean, that would be awesome if we could condition that.
Let's see. You can, and if that condition, I know Brian is still on the line, but if that condition is problematic, I mean, they can always come back and try to amend the order to deal with that condition. So, I mean, your role is to protect the resource area, and if they're not having any structures or anything back there anymore, I mean, I think relocating that fence to the wetland line is something that you guys can certainly condition to do.
Yeah.
Just go ahead. Yeah, Ashley, sorry.
Go ahead, Joe.
I just feel like that fence just tells everyone that's as far as we can go, but it's beyond the wetland flag. So I just think it's gonna be problematic later on.
Yeah, no, so I think that's good that we move it or request that it's moved to the wetland line.
Agree.
Yeah.
All right, so that'd be condition 21. While removing, actually, the split rail fence is to be relocated to the wetland line with no mowing in the resource area. That'd be
Any-
condition 21.
21. Awesome. Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue as amended? Motion made by Joe, seconded by Ian. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding. Oh, Ian, you're muted.
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips. Maureen, you're muted.
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Wallach AC LLC at 45 Hulbert Ave.
Sorry about that. So this is the one that during discussion, I added from the original draft that I sent you guys, condition 20, that all lighting shall be directed away from the resource areas with the exception of land subject to coastal storm and flowage. And then 21 is that where I just stole the condition from the last one, so I won't read that little novel for fertilizers, pesticides, and herbicides.
Thank you, Jeff.
Wait, I have one more. And then a condition 22 that all plantings be native with no cultivars.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from commissioners? Ian?
Well, two things, Madam Chair. Should we perhaps say all lighting, whether exterior or interior? It's, it's getting to that point where we seem to be having to dot every I, and cross every T. And the other thing is there an irrigation component to this? So should we specify no irrigation, or in terms of leaching, since it's so close to the resource area? So I guess I'm asking Jeff through you, if I may, whether we should start those types of conditioning.
So real easily, Ian, number 20, I just changed the language to say all interior and exterior lighting shall be directed away from the resource areas.
Thank you.
As for irrigation, I think I'd have to ask the question. It didn't come up in the public hearing for clarity. There may already be an existing irrigation system within the lawn. We could put a condition 23 that no new irrigation system be installed.
Thank you. I forgot to ask, and so thank you.
Yeah, I think that it would be good to add no new irrigation, because I would hate to see them try and irrigate those native plantings beyond just their establishment, because they shouldn't need regular irrigation after they're established.
So no new permanent irrigation then?
Yeah, I think
Well, I think you could just put no new irrigation system or expansion of any existing system. I think you would be covered by that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, so motion made by Ian, seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Douglas M. Raymond at 5 Cornish Street.
Yes, so this was the project, the flood zone for the porch that Don Bracken had presented and a little bit of expansion. The only condition that I had put above our normal one was that no fill was permitted.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions or thoughts from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue as drafted?
Motion to issue.
Is there a second? Seconded by Dave. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
I think that carries unanimously. And that moves us on to Roberta M. Brown at 9 Beach Street.
I'm recused.
Thank you for reminding me.
So I didn't have any conditions per se, but I was going to say after the discussion, if we wanted just to clarify with an additional finding number 2, that the relocated structure is not a pre-1978 structure.
Yeah, I think that might be good to call out. Any other thoughts or comments from commissioners? If not, is there a motion to issue as amended?
Also move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Maureen. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
So that carries with Commissioner Topham recused. And that moves us on in the public hearing to amendment of the Town of Nantucket Conservation Commission Wetland Protection Regulations. And Jeff sent these out, I believe, during our last meeting. Everybody should have that document.
Yeah, so I unfortunately still haven't gotten back the markup from town council on this, but if people have comments, I'm certainly happy to discuss those.
Any comments or additions or anything to the draft? It's like no. Jeff, do we think town council will have a chance to look at this before next meeting?
I'm hoping so. I know they just got jammed up. George got jammed up on a couple other things. We had a big public records request come into the town that's in his one of his matters that he's working on in regards to Surfside Crossing. That chewed up a bit of time because that was kind of a time-sensitive response. So I think he got a little delayed. So I know his end has been kind of completed on that for now. So hopefully he'll be back on this one here shortly. But I'll follow up with George as well.
Thank you, Jeff.
There's been some council things going on too. So
Yes, there have.
always something.
Well, if there are no comments or questions at this point, we will continue this matter to the next meeting.
Yes, that'd be great if we could.
Okay. So this will continue. We'll move on to other business, approval of minutes from August 20th. I hope everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes. Ian?
So a couple of things, Madam Chair.
Yes.
First of all, I think the date it says May 14th rather than August 20th.
I missed that somehow when I looked at them.
And on page 4, for part of 11 Jonathan Way, towards the bottom of the page, I'm quoted as saying one waiver was for the footings. It wasn't 6 feet to groundwater. I think that should have been 2 feet rather than 6. So
Yes.
But thanks always to Terry, especially in this difficult situation.
Yes, she is the best. We are lucky to have her. It's for sure.
For mumbling to her, I might add.
So at this point, should we wait on the minutes until Terry can amend them?
See if I can.
She's not
Yeah.
on. She's not typing into the public chat right now.
You were a little cranky last meeting, Ian, if you remember.
See if Terry.
Best behavior.
Yes, thank you.
So Terry has spoken, and she has said that we can approve as amended, and that she blushes at your praise.
Perfect. So is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended? Motion made by Maureen. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joe. So by roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Harrisman, aye. Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
That carries unanimously. And again, thank you, Terry. And that moves us on to discussion of SBPF 77 through 122 Baxter Road and 65 through 67 Baxter Road. And we have Rick Atherton and Burton Balkind on this call. I don't know, they sent
Do you want me to give a little update quickly, Madam Chair? Because I have some stuff to add to this. So a few kind of irons in the fire on this one. So I know we reported at the last meeting that we weren't able to get verification on that sand delivery sheet that we had gotten. And since that hearing, we were able, through Toscana, to track down the sand delivery invoices and tickets. And I know we're working on getting all of that verified. Kind of first glance that we were able to. Apparently we had just spoken to the wrong individual at Toscana. So they were able to produce that. Christina Gelamy was great and found that for us when she got back from wherever she was. And we have that in our hands now. So we're working on verifying that as we go. The town manager has asked our office to kind of put together a whole comprehensive list of all open orders of conditions for any work, not just the geotubes, but also to the south, and kind of put together a chart of what's outstanding, who the applicants were, who the property owners are that are affected by it, and have that for the select board to review, and then also get that to you guys for your review, just to go over that. I think the hopes with that is to kind of straighten out where we are. It looks like whether they're expired or not, there's about 6 or 7 orders of conditions that are still outstanding and floating around out in the ether from various times and for various projects that we're looking to get cleaned up and also deal with some requirements. Just as an example, SE 48 1659 by itself has the original order and then 2 subsequent amendments where conditions were changed through there. And we're having to go through, and they've requested that we do a little bit of a condition audit for all of the conditions that are valid. And one of the questions that we've come up with also is not all of the conditions were listed on all of the amendments, is how that works together. If they are gone from one to the other, or how that works together. As we kind of dug all of those back out. So I apologize for we missed one of the amendments before, but we're working on putting that list together, especially as it relates to the delivery of sand and the requirements to deliver sand and what the volumes are supposed to be for those lots, especially for further south. And then hopefully we'll be able to deal with the other outstanding orders and carry conditions forward that need to be carried forward through a certificate, or get some of those orders off the record so those conditions aren't overlapping or contradicting other conditions. So it's a little bit of a hodgepodge that we're trying to put together for them. I wanted to have that for tonight and just unfortunately didn't finish. going through that. We also had an incident in the last week where there was some work that occurred down in the southern section on the core logs that were there. Our restriction to them was very specific, that they weren't to be installing any new material. We were down on the beach, and I was down on the beach there again today, and they moved some sand around at the end. The tubes are still uncovered. They haven't brought material in to cover those tubes yet. I was able to verify with Mr. Lager that they didn't have plans to do that until authorized by the commission to do so. So that's something that hopefully once we finish with the sand verification, we're able to get back on top of. And then last but not least, but related, but not directly related to the sand in that area, we've also been looking into something that took place at 71 Baxter Road, the property formerly owned by John Merson. It's kind of right at the intersection of Bayberry Lane and Baxter Road, kind of on the ocean side. It's kind of that, I always say it's a house that looks like it was built in the 70s. It's kind of a funky house that's there. The public access that extended from Baxter Road to the bluff has been intercepted by a hedgerow that was extended, and then the path that had historically been mown from the road edge to kind of the bluff walk area. The opening is through the front hedge, but that path hasn't been maintained as it has in the past. And then on the bluff side, there's some vegetation that was planted that went across where that path used to be. So that path is not accessible to all people. I mean, I was able to go out and take kind of our annual bluff measurements for this time of year through that area, and wasn't impeded, but certainly someone with a disability or issues with walking or getting around vegetation would have more difficulty than they used to getting to and from the bluff walk from Baxter Road in that area. So that's something, if you want us to pursue enforcement on that, we certainly can. If we wish, we can just send a letter to that applicant and tell them that they need to restore that path. We're happy to take whatever direction you guys feel necessary to get that site back into the way it has historically been used, and providing that access back from the bluff walk back to Baxter Road. Sorry, that was kind of lengthy, but that's kind of all encompassing for that area.
Thank you, Jeff, for that summary. I mean, my feeling is we should probably issue an enforcement to get these people in front of us publicly, so that they recognize that they've blocked a public way. I just think sending a letter isn't gonna put the message out there, but that's just my feeling. Ian, you had a comment?
Yes. So thank you, Jeff, for going out and checking that. And in fact, it was completely open when John owned it. So now, if you didn't know that the public access was there, you would assume it was private, the way that they've planted across, when from the entrance to Baxter Road. And the other thing is that when Merson owned the property, there was no irrigation for the hedgerow, which is set back about, I don't know, what would you say, 15 feet from the bluff. And so the new owners have installed irrigation without coming before us. They also, in fact, did extensive work apparently in terms of planting and replanting there. So I would like that to be addressed too. Although I know you obviously have enough on your plate, but it seems I would agree with you, Ashley, that they should come before us.
Certainly, I mean, we're happy to issue without that enforcement. It's honestly, enforcements for us aren't more work once they're identified and the paperwork goes out. It kind of turns into the burden of that property owner to come forward and kind of display what they did, and we can do kind of a quick take on what has historically been there. So those are usually pretty easy to sort out in cases like this where it's wide open spaces. And I think it's pretty clear from the aerial photos where the path used to be, where the hedgerow used to be, and all of those things that are there. So I think that one's pretty straightforward. It's not overly complicated.
Madam Chair, if I may ask one more question.
Yes.
So why did Netco have front-end loaders down there at all? I mean, I thought they weren't supposed to do any work down there. So I'm a bit puzzled.
So the ones that were there, they did some work in between and on the ends of the tubes where they just moved some of their stockpiled material, and they didn't bring in any new material. But I have since then requested that they stop all work until this was straightened out and be done.
Thank you, Jeff. Because I worry that it's possible that they aren't just moving stockpiled material, but actual beach sand around their project.
I have that same concern. So I don't think that falls on deaf ears.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners at this point?
It's really disappointed with that go.
Yeah.
Kill me.
It's
So,
bad.
so real quickly, and I apologize, I don't mean to interrupt, Maureen. One of the other things that we're trying to resolve too on all of these old orders, we're trying to also straighten out. And I think this is why Libby asked for it. Trying to straighten out for a lot of these properties. Most of this work is on the town-owned land that's there. I never remember if it's 48.8 or 49.9 for which parcel it is. For whatever reason, I think it's 48.8. But the land that's there, and interestingly enough, all of the work is only recorded against the town land on certificate 1702, which is our certificate of title. It doesn't actually go on to the specific properties that are there. So I think kind of to jump ahead, and I know George isn't here, so he won't yell at me for doing this. But I think that really goes to the matter that we've discussed before, where the properties that are affected and protected by a structure like this aren't required to put this on their certificate of title because none of the work is taking there, which is the reason why I believe that the applicant is always one of the parties that's responsible and on the hook for it, because the folks that are doing the work in this case and sponsoring the work and putting that together don't have that on their title. So it's something that they're doing underneath the applicant's name. So I think that's where I truly believe that the applicant is the primary responsible party in any of these cases, and the town is the property owner with it on our certificate of title is kind of secondary to that. And if there's a third party that's paying for delivering that work, that's great. But ultimately, their skin in the game isn't the same, because their title isn't affected by it. They would be much more difficult to go after in a legal sense because they're receiving protection from something that's off-site. So that's why the licensing agreements are so important. And that's also why applicant responsibility is so paramount in all these cases.
Thank you, Jeff. Maureen, and then I'll go to you, Seth.
And Jeff, I want to say thank you as well. Those issues about the responsibility are ones that unfortunately are, part of the thread running through so much of the issues and problems we've had along Baxter Road. And I was just going to say earlier that I totally support, an enforcement order against, was it 71 that you mentioned, Ashley, I think? I think we really need to be firm and clear that this isn't, that we're looking at the entire project, and we're making sure that what is done should be, what should be done is done, and maybe more importantly, sometimes what shouldn't be done isn't done. So, so I just want to say I support that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Jeff, and then Seth.
Oh, Seth can go first. That's fine.
Okay. Seth?
Yeah, more of the same here, but Thank you, Jeff, for your explanation of the title and whose responsibility this falls on, because it's been something that's been continuously debated, but it seems pretty clear that the applicant has responsibility for these projects, the property owner has responsibility for the projects, and the person doing the work, the contractor, has responsibility for the projects. It's an interesting case, as you said, because the homeowners are paying for this work to happen on property that is not theirs, but that should not be relevant to the analysis that ultimately is the applicant that needs to be held responsible here. And then I think definitely we need to issue an enforcement on 71 Baxter requiring them to appear if unpermitted work happens, in the buffer zone. And lastly, just with regards to DECO moving the material that they claim had been stockpiled, that's all fine and good, but it's impossible not to move some beach sand as well when you're pushing a loader over the beach. Even if it's minimal, it's 0% chance that only their material was moved. So that's my comments.
Thank you,
I-
Seth.
I would agree, and kind of furthermore, one of the things that we've been talking about a lot in our office, and I know some of our bigger discussions, is bringing someone in, either it's into our staff or hiring someone specific to kind of be the town's eyes and ears on this project for the whole length on a full-time basis, whether it's through or all reporting goes to them to provide and review, just to make sure that it gets the time necessary to process and review, especially as the project, even as it sits now, is pretty substantial and there's a lot of moving parts, to try to get a little better oversight from the town end on what's happening on the town land. So hopefully that comes to be, because that would be nice to have some additional eyes and ears on our behalf out there on a more regular basis and on a more continual basis as well.
Any other thoughts or comments from commissioners before I give it over to Rick and Burton to explain their submission? Looks like no. Which one of you would like to start? Rick, you have your electronic hand up.
Do you unmute me or do I do?
You did it.
Wow. Good evening. Just a couple of observations. First, it's nice to hear from Jeff with an explanation of that covers a number of our issues. Just a couple of observations. One, the who's responsible portion of these discussions still kind of eludes me a little bit, because when you look at the applications that come before you, they say SBPF, and then we find they don't really mean that necessarily. So it just behooves all of us in this Baxter Road matter to be clear whenever there's an amendment or a new request, who's making the application and what their responsibility is up front. Another general observation, Jeff referred to a number of amendments and how the requirements of any one of your orders of conditions carries forward to amendments in case the certain specific items were not restated. I would find it terribly unsettling if the applicants didn't agree without any equivocation that all the conditions from the first go around through any amendment still apply. And I think that kind of confirmation could be made by a simple letter from them that recognizes we're not trying to get out of any of our responsibilities. Thank you very much. And I say that, Jeff, more in the context, I sometimes hear a sense, well, these old orders, they have different rules and so on and so forth, and we can't be sure we have the same enforcement powers. I think there's an easy way for the commission to be sure they have all the powers required to enforce those conditions. So those are my first general comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Burton, would you like to speak?
Sure. I had a couple of questions, Madam Chair, for staff. First one, is there a cease and desist order for Netco to work on the south part of the properties mentioned?
So the work that was stopped is they're not able to install new material onto those projects to the south.
I submitted some pictures of them doing that. There was 2 bobcats on the beach, as you know, and there was also some fresh sand poured over in the nourishment area where both north and south have been using. I don't know where that sand was going, but it was fresh. It was a different color than the sand that had been dumped recently. I don't know if that was brought to the south or the north. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I hope that if, well, another question was Netco the operators of the bobcats that were on the beach? Do you know?
I honestly, Burton, I am not sure the answer of that question, or if that was work done by subs.
Okay. I think we need to find out who was on the beach, and then I think the big picture is I hope there is some kind of enforcement action that comes out of them doing work on the beach when they were told and told not to do that. So I thank you guys all for your time and attention.
Yeah. Bert, I will tell you that is our intention. I just want to make sure that we have all of the correct information to issue that out. Sorry, we've been busy. Chasing a lot of things right now.
It's like nonstop.
Always.
So Jeff, as part of this discussion, since we're still waiting on Toscana slips and more information, besides the enforcement order on 71, should we be continuing this forward again?
As much as I want to say no, the answer is yes. We should be. We still need to resolve a few issues. So hopefully, I'm hopeful that the meeting on the 17th will hopefully be when we can take some definitive action on all of it and then maybe get it off the agenda for a little stretch.
Oh, that would be so lovely.
I think we finally have at least all of the pieces to assemble together. We just got to assemble them. So.
Yeah. Are there any final thoughts or questions from commissioners before we continue this for more information? Looks like no. So at this point, we will continue the discussion of SBPF to our next meeting on September 17th.
Could you guys also make a motion to issue that enforcement action?
Yes.
Issue.
Is there a second? Seconded by Dave.
I'll do it myself. I'll do both. Go.
By roll vote, Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Erisman, aye. Golding. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, Madam Chair. Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Topham.
Aye.
All right, so it is unanimous that we issue that enforcement order to 71 Baxter. Thank you, Rick and Burton, for participating and for your submission. This moves us on to reports. We'll start with Crack.
Wait, real quickly, I hate to interrupt. On that enforcement action, just everyone keep in mind, Joanne will send that around for your guys' signatures within the other paperwork that will come around in the next couple of days. So just keep an eye out for that one as well.
Thank you.
On to Crack.
On to Crack.
Autre paix, autre merde. Nothing to report.
Rough English speakers, that's good. All right, nothing to report for Crack. CPC.
What Ian said.
NP and EDC?
I wish I could say the same. The MPEDC meeting was routine in terms of reordering priorities with, the transportation, our transportation coordinator, who's left in March, I guess, and we have yet to rehire anybody. And so that has caused a lot of extra work for the staff there. But something came up. It was just quite odd. The part of what we were looking at were projects that Andrew Vorse had on his list of things that he needed to be looking at. And one of them was and this is something I'd sent Jeff an email about. One of them was the update of the Nantucket and Matticat Harbor update. There was the plan was done back in 2009, and it was supposed to have been redone last year. And I haven't been following this, so this may be stuff everybody knows, but there was a waiver applied for last year, and so now they're going forward to get a consultant, and so I don't know, Jeff, if you've got an update on kind of where that is, because my concern about how the process by which consultants are being chosen is really seems needlessly complicated and very hard to determine. And so, but this one is something that's certainly under our purview. And Jeff, whatever you have to add to that, I just thought it'd be easier just to do it here at the meeting. But or if anybody else knows anything about this as well.
So just to kind of let everyone know, this was something that kind of landed on my seemingly never-ending plate of stuff to do fairly recently. So we've put together kind of an internal, like really rough draft RFP. I don't know if Andrew talked about that at NP and EDC to address the harbor plan update. So the harbor plan update is something where every 10 years the harbor plan needs to be essentially reaffirmed by the state and adopted, and there's actionable items that take place in there. Two of the things that go with that are the establishment of a harbor plan committee, and then after the plan is updated, there's a harbor plan implementation committee that goes with that. So I think the original draft that we sent obviously was just to Andrew and to Sheila and town admin to say, hey, are we on the right track? And then I think we would like to get the committee kind of reformed again, that harbor plan committee, and constituted correctly to go through the rest of that process.
Mm-hmm.
And then once that procurement team is put together, probably to do that through the committee and through some level of staff as well, just to make sure that we're covered. Again, the makeup and number of people that go onto that committee is something that is dictated a little bit through 30B and through our finance people. I just get told if I have to sit in on one or participate or whichever ones. But I think we would intend to make sure that the committee was engaged. Before that committee consisted of folks, I believe the Concom had a member, SHAB had a member, MP and EDC, I want to say, had a member. There are some staff folks, and then the implementation committee kind of spawned from there. So the last time that committee was together, I know there are folks like Peter Brace and Sarah Octay and a lot of group that was there. So hopefully we'll tap into kind of that same resource of people to put it together. We had intended to get it kind of out to bid in the early part of this year, and it was a COVID casualty as well, so we got delayed. So that's hopefully we'll be back out and everything kind of back up and running in the next, hopefully 45 to 60 days. But that's kind of where we are in the process. And I think, the primary goals of this update, we had a lot of good success in the last harbor plan with some zoning overlays and some restrictions. The coastal perimeter restriction for no new docks and piers came out of it. shellfish management plan came out of the last harbor plan. So lots of really great items, but a couple of the things that they didn't contemplate in 09 were things like sea level rise and climate change and coastal resiliency and kind of coastal adaptation. So hopefully this harbor plan will go a way to address that. And it was originally pushed back to have hopefully coastal resiliency plan kind of under development and underway to be sure that it got all integrated correctly and not try to do two plans that need to integrate at the same time to have kind of a cross up. And then for lots of different reasons, the coastal resiliency plan got delayed, COVID hit and everything got delayed. So we got pushed back a bit. So hopefully we'll get back on track here relatively soon.
Jeff, I'd just like to follow up. Jeff, so do you think that, is there a plan, if you will, that the crack consultant will be, the coastal resiliency plan consultant will be chosen, and does that plan have to go through all of it before we can get to the harbor plan? I mean, I know they need to work together, but so I'm just not clear how much has to get done with the coastal resilience before we can get to the harbor per se, because obviously they're totally linked.
I think at this point we're going to have to do them simultaneously, so I think it's going to be some coordination between them both, and some stuff that's there. I actually think it's going to be a really interesting opportunity to perhaps do some public outreach at the same time. If we do coastal resiliency, some sort of charrettes or public listening session or public information session to tie parts of it to the harbor plan as well, to get some input into that. I think there's a really good opportunity to do that, but I don't think that either of those plans are really successful without one another and kind of tying into things like the hazard mitigation plan as well. So I know it's our intent to have, I would assume they would be different consultants at this point, but I think having them be able to share resources and kind of communicate, I think would be imperative to the success of both of them at this point.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, guys. So moving on in committees, Mark, has your Pulpus Harbor Committee started yet?
Well, to quote Ian, nada.
Okay. So then we'll move on to commissioners' comments. Jeff, I just have a question, and I know your plate is very full. Have the Hollywood Farm owners at 315 Pulpus made any moves?
1 second, I'm double checking with Joe. I know I haven't received anything. Yeah, have we received anything from the Frables?
No, we have not.
So we gave them a firm deadline to respond. And that passed, I believe, on August the 31st. So we will be going to the next step with them to bring them in.
Is that like sheriff going to the door?
It will start serving them daily tickets via the sheriff until they return.
Excellent. So perfect.
We rarely get to this, so hopefully it's one and done. So we'll just be issuing out kind of a $50 a day penalty, and we'll see where it goes, and we'll get to a certain spot. If they just don't respond or they don't pay, then it turns into a criminal matter, and then we'll turn it over to the police, and it'll go where it goes. So
love it.
Thank you. Right.
On page of the Inky.
Yeah, it's not usually people respond. I don't know why we've chosen not to. So
it's a sad case because she's a wonderful ER doctor.
Yeah. So, and I feel bad for the neighbor that's had some issues, and we've tried to encourage them that a lot of what's going on are things that are outside of our jurisdiction, that they need to take some initiative as the property that's been damaged to take legal matters for themselves, but that hasn't happened as of yet. So we have that magic 100-foot line, and if you get outside of it, there's nothing we can do to help. So
thank you for the update, Jeff. Ian?
No, I just, I'd like to echo Mark's comments. I totally agree. And
I'm baffled. So there we go. So very unfortunate.
I'm not baffled.
No, well, I'm not either. I was being tactful.
Not me.
All right, any other commissioners' comments? All right, so we'll move on to administrator staff reports.
All right, just real quick, I know, hopefully we'll get out of here, get fairly early.
My God, yeah.
Is, as you guys remember, Ashley is named to the settlement group with SBPF for those discussions. We've been having those. I don't want to necessarily get into details here, but one of the things that I think we talked about wanting to do is setting up an executive session where George could be present, and Ashley could update the board on what's been going on, what's been discussed, and kind of what steps where we're sitting. And just wondering, I was going to send an email, but since we're all present, would everyone possibly be available next Thursday sometime to just have a quick, I don't think it would be necessarily overly long, but maybe a half hour to an hour just to get an update from Ashley and George on what's been going on and a little update on those appeals as well.
The 10th?
Yes, the 10th.
Works.
Yes.
Do we want to, I know Ashley's kind of limited by time because she's back in school. Do we want to start at 4 instead of 5, or is 5 better for everybody?
Whatever works
For Ashley.
Yeah, 4 works fine for me if it works for you guys.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll try to confirm George for 4, and we'll shoot for there. And if he can't be available until 5, I'll let everybody know. But we'll shoot for next Thursday. Again, hopefully it won't be too long. But obviously, so just to remind everyone is we'll have to post it for open session, call into open session, and then go into executive session. So we'll have to send out 2 Zoom links to do that, and we'll remind everyone of that process. So we'll try to get that set up for next week. That's it for me.
Thank you, Jeff. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Joe. So by roll
You guys all
call,
freeze like Dave tonight or what? Like, what's going on?
I know. Beal,
Aye.
Engelborg,
Aye.
Arisman, I, Golding,
Aye.
LaFleur,
Aye.
Phillips,
I can't believe it. It's not even 8 o'clock.
Topham.
Aye.
Joe, go pick up your family.
I am going. I'm going right now. You joined up.
Ashley,
I want-
what's happening in school? Are you back in session?
The teachers are back in. The students are back in person on the 17th.
So is it going to be a staggered schedule?
It's a hybrid. Yeah. So it's staggered essentially.
Yeah. Well, good.